What? Alondo Brewington, thank you for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you for having me, Arnold. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm super grateful and excited to have you on. And yeah, so how could you tell us about yourself, and how you got into iOS?
So I've been a software developer by trade for years and years and years. I actually went to university as a computer science major. So it's been my career, but I got into iOS um, by chance, actually. So I had a friend who got me into the Macs. I was a Windows developer at the time. I've done all kinds of stuff, but at the time I was doing desktop software for Windows and web development. And a friend introduced me to the Mac, and I said, "Oh wow, really like this device." So I switched over from my PC to the Mac. And then one day I went over to his house. He had an iPhone, and he showed I had a Treo 650, which is like a really kind of bulky like phone with where the screen was about half the size of the device and the rest was a standard keyboard, sort of like what you would have with the what was the name of that popular
The BlackBerry?
yes, exactly, thank you, the BlackBerry.
Yeah.
And but he showed me this touchscreen and I was like, wait a minute, my mind was blown.
All
So
right.
immediately I said, I want to do this. I want to build apps on
Right.
this platform. So I
What
went to
was
the book.
2007?
No, I was a little late. This was 2008. So in
Okay.
2008, I ran to the bookstore. I bought 3 books. I rented a cabin in West Georgia. I'm originally from Atlanta, so I just drove to like West Georgia, rented a cabin, and just holed up in there for like 3 days building my first app. Just like I was so excited and so into it.
Right.
Um, And so that's how I got started. And then I found out later that a friend of mine that I used to work with was running the local iOS developers group in Atlanta, my friend Rusty.
Nice.
They had a 1 day conference. I volunteered to help build the conference app. It was called Coco Camp. And so I built one view on there. He saw that I contributed on GitHub, and he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I didn't know you were interested in iOS development." I was like,
Right.
"Yeah, man," because we had worked closely together for years. We were really good friends. But
Gotcha.
he still thought that I was doing Windows and database stuff, which is what I was doing. And he was like, "Hey, I've got a project if you want to come on board and work with us."
Right.
So I came on the first project, and then we worked together for a couple of years, just doing freelance iOS development projects. And
Right.
that's really just like I just hit the ground running, man. It just kind of I was in love with it, and I really
Right.
enjoyed the platform, and there I was.
Right. Nice. So what got you exactly? Was it like because the UI is very polished, or because of like the language, Objective C?
Oh no, it was a
Uh,
capacitive touchscreen. Like this was
okay.
a completely new shift. Like everything else had been like you either use a
Okay.
stylus or you're
Right.
using like a keyboard, and this was multi-touch recognition. You could do gestures on the phone, and I was like, oh boy, I gotta get into this.
Right. That's exciting. And yeah, so what sort of challenges were you facing once you got started?
Oh, wow. So, okay, this was Objective C. So,
Yeah.
Objective C was a new language for me.
Mm.
Had been writing in C sharp and then doing some like database programming stuff and just
Okay.
web development. And at that time, jQuery was like new. So,
Okay.
JavaScript has just gone like crazy since then, of course. Uh,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
with Objective C, you have to learn how to embrace the brackets. And
Right.
so,
Right.
and
Still
at the
today.
yeah, and you had to do reference counting. So you were managing the reference count. So we didn't have the automatic reference counting at that time.
Right.
Um, so it was pretty. I mean, this is iOS 3 between iOS 3 and 4,
Okay.
and so it's one of those things where it became it was really rough, like a lot of rough edges, but it was doable. I mean, it wasn't like it was
Right.
hard. It was just like it took more time. It definitely took more time to write
Gotcha.
like I'm knocking out apps now way faster.
Right. Nice. So could you tell me about like a project or an app that you're most proud of that you worked
Oh, that's a good one. I would say like currently my favorite app is the one I'm working on right now. It's called the Reflexes app. You can get it in the store right now. It's a
on?
game
Okay.
that
Nice.
wrote to give people something to do. It's fun, and it's using computer vision. So we have like, it's using the body pose model.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a game where you put virtual targets on the screen, and you are having to tap it.
Oh, wow.
So
Nice.
probably want
Yeah,
to
that's
pause.
good.
All right. So
Yeah.
this is it's a great game, and I'll give you a link to it. It's the Reflexes app. It's the name of the app in the App Store. We just launched about 2.5 weeks ago, so really
Nice.
exciting.
Yeah, and it's computer vision. So I believe that was introduced in iOS 13 with
Yeah.
uh, with ML, machine learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started working on it as a client project from a client I have based in the UK, and we actually were doing another completely different app that was much more advanced because we
Mhm.
actually have a PhD in ML, like that's actually working on the modeling for us to do analysis for sports.
Right.
But this one was like, with the quarantine, of course, no one could go out.
Right.
And in London, it was even more strict at the time. So we just pivoted to make this game. And it took us, I mean, it took us maybe like 4 weeks to like 4 or 5 weeks to get it together, test some things. We tried some other models. It was thankfully Apple made the body pose. They have like a few models available. I
Okay.
tried a few other models that didn't work as well with the game, and they were really memory intensive and the files were really large. But now with
Right.
that one, is amazing because it's really, really small. The app size is about 40 megs,
Okay.
and it's really, really responsive. And I'm running it on an older phone. So like the performance is pretty good. Like I have an iPhone 7S,
Oh,
7
okay.
Plus. It's like,
Right.
yeah. So it's wanted to make sure that if
Right.
someone got it, it would still work. But that's probably right now my favorite thing I'm most proud of. There's some other ones in the
Right.
past, but
Right.
it's been a while.
Gotcha. Nice. And so you've been working like at contracts, like solo or on teams, or like what's your preference over that?
So I have a preference for small teams. Like I definitely, I've done a few contracts, and I've had, I worked a contract a couple of years ago with a team out of both Minneapolis and Belarus. So I
Oh,
went to Belarus to work with the team in Belarus, which was absolutely great. Like it was really fun to be with a bigger team. But I
right,
just realized that like once you start to get the larger teams, the structure gets so that you're just touching like one piece of code, and it can be very repetitive and very boring. And then the communication channels have to be good. So I'm a big person, like I'll either do a solo project for someone, or work on a small team of like 2 to 3 people. I think is ideal.
right. Because you get to make decisions a lot faster that way.
Yes.
Like you say. Okay,
Yeah.
nice. And yeah, could you tell me about like your growth in iOS? Um, yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, no, I don't think I've ever asked me that. So when I first got started, I think
Right,
like with the language itself, that was the biggest thing. It's like always switching like languages. I've been written in a lot of languages. Like I almost went back to writing COBOL this year because
right.
of the need in New York. But I'm like, but from Objective C and really sort of learning to embrace the platform. So it's one thing that like if you bring your knowledge and your habits from another language or another area, and you kind of want, it's like language. I'm having that with Spanish here in Colombia. You can't necessarily translate everything. You should just speak the new language. So
Right,
speak the language of the platform. Speak the new, like if you go from Objective C to Swift, or you're coming from UI Kit to Swift UI,
right.
just like embrace the language and don't try to translate as much as just learning how to speak in that new language.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good example. Like UI kit to Swift UI. Like UI kit is imperative and Swift UI is declarative.
Yep.
So it's a whole different mindset. Try to get it.
And I've been loving it. I switched over. I've actually been doing
Okay.
all projects now in Swift UI
Okay.
since probably the beginning of this year. And it's a thing where I just decided that I was just going to embrace it and do it.
Right.
And so by doing that, it's really helped me to not to stop like trying. I'm very occasionally I do have to drop back in the UI kit. We had to do that for a couple of views with the new app,
Yeah.
just because they haven't, we're still early. They just dropped some new stuff.
Yeah, with like
But
collection views and stuff.
yeah, exactly. So you
Right.
either find a workaround or you just write a UI view controller representable or UI view representable
Right.
and keep it moving, which I love. I love the fact that you're not forced to make a choice. I know I said don't translate, but there's, you know, it's like English, right? There's rules to English, but you can always break every single one of the rules in some.
Right, right. I see. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Yeah, it's and so like UI kits and Swift UI. Do you do you think like in 5 years people will still be using UI kits or Swift UI?
Yes, I had a client that I was doing work with. We did a project for basically rehabilitation for
Okay.
patients in medical centers,
Hmm.
which I would love to revisit now in light of some of the new action classifiers that they're doing with ML. But they were still using the Objective C, and they were supporting a client with older devices just because. I mean, it's the medical facilities. They don't necessarily just have the budgets to go and upgrade all their equipment. So I was still writing for, I think iOS 7 or 8 I was supporting. So just understanding that it's not going away. There are going to be clients, there are going to be entities that don't upgrade as quickly. And if you have that skill, it's very important to sort of like keep that. Like if you came in and you know Objective C, you write Objective C, that skill's not going away. UI kits isn't going away anytime soon because people just don't do wholesale rewrites of software that way. There's too much of a capital outlay that it's not worth it. No one's just going to say, hey, we spent all this money and we have this app and it's written UI kit. Swift
Right,
UI is new. It's exciting. Let's
right,
do a rewrite. It's like, they don't make any money that way. And the customer won't see that.
exactly right. It's all about the results at the end of the day.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Gotcha.
It's exciting for us as developers, not as exciting.
That's right. Yeah. And another thing to follow up with that is like, what's the best way you find contracts?
So I think, and it's really tough because if I was a newly minted developer and I don't have a network of people, it's going to be, you've got to put yourself out there and really have to start making connections because that's really what it is. Like my
Okay.
current client was a direct referral from another. I only have two clients I work with because I spend the rest of my time writing my own apps.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that client referred me directly, and it's a smooth process. It wasn't like, oh, I need to do a bunch of interviews, I have to go through all this stuff. It was literally two conversations. Give us your price for this project. We had a contract. We were off and running. And so networking is very, very important. And I know it's tougher if you're new coming into the field. So one of the things I would say is similar to what I did, and even recognizing I had the benefit of this connection. Find your local developers groups, join one, go there, participate. Don't just go and listen to the talks, volunteer to do a talk. My first talk at this was at the Triangle Cocoa. So I kind of lived in 3 different states in the US before I left at the same time. So I'm a member of like 3 different iOS developer groups in 3
Right.
different states, like simultaneously. So this one was for Triangle Cocoa and Raleigh Durham area. And I gave a talk. I just volunteered, like, I just want to get better at this. I want to be able to present on these topics. A lot of those meetups are hosted by companies and or recruiting companies. And so that's a great way to like, even within the group of people who are showing up, to separate yourself from the pack so that when the recruiters are like, hey, we have a new spot open, or we're trying to fill this role for this client, you'll be the first person more likely that they'll reach out to because you're demonstrating even within that, you're building the network. And even other people there will say, hey, we're growing our team, we're doing these things. So you got to put yourself out there. You got to start making a community, build your own community and make those connections within the community.
Nice. Yeah, that's really good. And also, yeah, I also saw that you have a talk coming up as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm doing the keynote for the upcoming 360 iDev, which
Yeah.
I know WWDC is going on this week, and there's a lot of great stuff. And I like WW,
Yeah.
but 360 iDev is actually my favorite conference. So before I
Oh,
left,
okay.
I used to go every year. And John and I, the founder and the guy that runs the conference,
Yeah.
you know, we've talked like back and forth about other stuff. And then finally this year, he's like, man, you know, I never thought about, he's like, you've been traveling. He's been following my travels. So I've been traveling for the last 5 years, like just around the world. It's like my 3rd loop this
Oh,
time.
you've been
And
to
he's just like,
Africa?
yeah, well, only Morocco. In fact,
Oh,
this Corona has ruined my plans because I'm supposed to be there now. It's like
oh,
my plan, yeah, my plan was to to go to either start in Kenya or start in South Africa and do like a year of just slow travel, like
right,
Tanzania. It's going to
yes,
Rwanda. This is like going to, and then eventually to Ethiopia too, because I was like, I got to get to Ethiopia as well.
right,
And with the other goal of picking up my another language, which was Swahili, I was like, well, I can speak Swahili in like at least 4 or 5 of these countries here. So I was like looking for a place to take classes and just kind of settle in for a few months as
right,
I learn.
right.
And then of course this COVID-19 comes in and just like wipes all of my travel plans, which is why I'm still here. I'm still here and I'll probably be here until
Right.
the international flights resume and everything gets settled.
Yeah, hopefully by next year things will be better.
I
So,
hope so. I
yeah.
really do.
So yeah, you're still telling us about I360 Dev? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, 360 iDev
Three,
conference is coming up. It's in August,
okay.
and it's a great conference.
Okay.
And so I'm giving the keynote, so it'll be the first day, the first talk, and it will be
Yes.
about being an indie developer and
Okay.
speaking to people who are interested in
Right.
becoming an indie and what it means. Because part of my
Okay.
journey
Mhm.
was like I had a very strict definition of that in my mind when I started,
Right.
and it's evolved because I've gone through a lot of struggles with apps that I've released in the store and tried to sell. I mean, it's you have to be flexible, and I think after 5 years of doing this, like it's really helped me understand sort of some things that I think other people can take away
Mm.
to improve their chances of really being independent and being flexible on what that means and what it means to be independent.
Right. Nice. And could you tell us about, so being independent, that means you're working remotely most of the time. So tell us about how you stay focused um, working remotely. How's your routine?
That's a great question. One of the things I started developing this before I left. So even before, so on social media, I'm the Coco nomad because I'm like a nomad and Coco and the Coco framework as well. So it's like I started with Coco framework and iOS. Um,
Nice.
but before I left in like the early late 2000, like 2010s, like I started doing this travel where I would just, I'd lived in Atlanta because I'm from Atlanta. I had a home in North Carolina, and then I had friends and community in South Carolina. So I would just migrate between these 3 places, and then eventually I would do side trips to other places. And I
Mhm.
started working. I was always working from all these places. So I'd be working from Colorado. I'd be working from Miami, Florida, or whatever. And so
Right.
I had to learn how to discipline my time. And what I call it, I mean, there's a term called workflow, right? And I think about it in terms of like the same way you manage your money, you have to manage your cash flow, you have to
Mhm.
manage your workflow. You
Yes.
have to manage your time and attention because like your money in finance,
Mhm.
time and attention is your most valuable asset, right? And you have to take care of it. And you have to invest it in places where you're going to get a good return.
Right.
So it's important to sort of structure your day. And I'm a lot more flexible because it's taken me a long time. I used to work the typical 9 to 5 jobs, or when you've got code to get out in a release, 10 to 10. You know,
Yeah.
so you're just working 12 hours because you just got to get the code out.
Right.
Um, but I've learned to be more efficient with the times. I've given myself more free time and time to think, because think about the work that we do is like requires you to be focused, and you have to think, and you have to be clear. And
Right.
just because you're sitting at a computer does not mean you're being productive. And that's
Right.
the trap of being in an office is they say, oh, well, you're sitting there and you're at your computer, your hands on the keyboard.
Right.
You must be working. And it's like, no, you can be sitting there just trying to figure out, like, I have no idea how I'm going to get around this bug. Whereas now, for instance, this morning, I got up really early, like 4:30, and I start working. I've got like, I'm adding watch OS capability to this play map. A little bit of that, I did some coding, and then at about 8, I just went for a walk. So it's like I ran up to a couple of provisioning profile, as you know, like when you try to provision, it's like something's gonna go wrong. And so I was just wrestling with this certificate. I'm like, why is this not working? Then I went for a walk for like 45 minutes. I put on like some podcasts, just walk around the neighborhood, went to the local university. And then I came back. I'm refreshed, I'm renewed physically, and I've taken my mind off and given me some time to sort of think about it. And I was able to get past that. And those are the kind of small things. And I'm a big proponent of napping. I know that's not something you necessarily do in any office, although some do have like napping rooms or whatever. But I'm
Right.
like, we took naps in school in kindergarten, like, you know, so like rest, physically rest. And what I find is that if I take a little bit of time to rest in the middle of the day,
Mhm.
I'm able to actually work a lot longer and more productively. And I'm not advocating that you just work, 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 work. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that your work, when you do work, is a lot more productive.
Gotcha.
Take care of yourself, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I really like the 45-minute walk. I try to do that myself as well. Just try to do it every day and just text your minds of things, and you end up coming up with new ideas when you're doing that walk. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
pretty
that's my biggest idea generator. I agree. Like you do the 45-minute walk, the ideas just come. And my biggest
right.
thing now is like I have to like dictate on my phone. Like Siri's gotten better. The dictation's gotten better. So like I can just speak my ideas because a lot of times I'm like, I won't remember it by the time I get back home until I write it down.
Okay. So do you write your ideas in notes, or do you have like a notebook?
I do everything. So
Okay.
I have a in fact I have a notebook right here,
Okay.
and this is sort of like my thought process.
Nice.
And I will do everything, including sketches. I keep
Nice.
colored pencils, and so
Right.
this is a sketch for a new financial literacy app I'm working on. It'll be coming out maybe in the fall. Um,
Gotcha. Nice.
and so
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
I write stuff, I keep it, and then I transfer it though because I don't like to lose it in the paper, and it's hard
Mhm.
to carry around a bunch of notebooks. So I transfer everything that I do, either taking a photo of like a screen
Mhm.
or just transcribing into something like a Trello
Yeah.
or Day One, which I use for my daily journaling,
Gotcha.
or some other productive software. So I try to make sure because then I turn it into a deliverable. Like, okay, when am I going to work on this? And I don't work. I mean, I don't schedule everything, but at
Uh-huh.
least I want it captured somewhere so I don't forget about it, and then it'll come
Okay.
back. And for me, it's a great way to let the ideas sort of marinate
Right.
because not all the ideas, like when you first get an idea, you think it's the best thing since sliced bread, right? It's like, oh, it's my idea, it's great.
Right.
But then like take it out of your head, put it somewhere, and then come back to it. Sometimes I look at them, I'm just like, oh, that was a horrible idea. It's like, I'm not doing that. And just like,
Yeah.
but but you give yourself the respect of respecting the idea, like you're listening to yourself, you know, and you want to be heard. This is like it's kind of holistic or like meditation, or I don't know where you would categorize it, but it's sort of like this thing about treating yourself better. It's like giving yourself the space and listening to yourself and respecting yourself.
Right. Nice. I like that. And to go, oh, you also mentioned financial literacy. That'll be really helpful. An app. Look at.
Yeah, so the big thing that I've been learning the last few years and working with is since I've been traveling, I've been meeting a lot of people who do just so many different things and to make a living that I've just been fascinated by. When I first started doing this and became what they call, the digital nomad, like
Right.
everybody sort of assumes, like when you say, well, I'm a software developer, and they just roll their eyes, like, of course it's easy for you. You write software, they just throw money at you guys. And I'm just like, no, I write my own apps in the app store and nobody's buying. So like nobody wants to pay $3 for an app or something.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just tough.
You
And
gotta
so
find ways to market it, and
yeah, you got to
yeah.
market it. And that's the biggest thing is learning from other people, like how they sell everything. I've met people, drop shippers, people who do, I've done some retail arbitrage, the homemade products on Etsy, other consulting, marketing, all these things. And these people are doing it remotely. And I'm like, oh, I've got to learn. So I start paying attention and talking to people, asking questions and try to figure out like, and then watching YouTube too, because there's people on YouTube that also talk about this stuff.
Right.
So I think it's like my focus right now, honestly, is like twofold, right? I'm really big on financial independence and location independence. I really think if you can get yourself in this where you can live where you want and live in a place where you're respected and treated well, and also be financially independent because of course you gotta pay for that and have a place to stay and take care of family and everything like that. So that's really my focus. In fact, I started on YouTube recently making videos, and that's sort of the direction that I'm going in. And using computing programming is one of the ways that you can, create financial independence for yourself.
Nice. And yeah, especially now with like the whole coronavirus situation, a lot of people are going to realize that, hey, I can work remotely. I can be a digital nomad. So pretty sure a lot of people are going to join you.
Yeah, it's amazing seeing how many companies, even companies I used to work for, it's like, oh no, you can't work remotely. And now they're like, hey, we're doing remote work now. What are you working on? What are you doing? It's like, okay, yeah.
Right, nice. And another thing I wanted to discuss is people of color in technology. The number of black developers, in software development is really, really low. Why do you think that is, and what do you think would be a solution to increase the number?
That's a really, really good question. It's also part of that focus of the location independence and financial independence. I think for me, I spent a lot of time in my parents' hometown, which is a very rural place in North Carolina. And so it's a large community of blacks, people that live there, because this is the South. Like I'm from the South, I'm a Southerner 100%. And a lot of the communities are very rural and they're disconnected technically. So there's not access to information. So it's not one of the primary problems is not even being aware that you can do these things. So it's kind of like I'm traveling around the world, I'm meeting people, learning how to do all these things. So then I feel like it's on me to start to share that information so that other people, particularly people of color, can see like, hey, this is possible, but then drill down and say, this is how you can do it, because there's still these other obstacles that you have to overcome. Talking about getting jobs is a little bit different because there's some other obstacles there. I know a lot of black women who are developers, and I know a lot who have left development because of how they are treated within the field. And women in general have said this. I've listened to them and they'd say like, they don't stay long because it's not a welcoming environment. And so that's what I talk about, going where you're, this location independence, going where you're treated well, going where you're respected. I think because the way that these tools are being made available to us, we can start to build our own things. And it's like instead of depending on these gatekeepers, and I'm not saying don't go get jobs and don't fight for hiring and diversity in these places. I'm not saying that. It's a battle we have to fight on multiple fronts. Right. But I think the more we share, in fact, that was absolutely one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Kenya. I found like a group of developers on like Medium, somebody posted, I'm like, these other young developers. I'm like, oh wait, I'm the old developer. Let me go work with these young people and help them, but also learn. And it's like, hey, I can help. I know how, I've been a trainer. I know how to do some things. Let me go and give something to kind of help. Because I was really excited. It's like they were excited as I was when I first saw this iPhone. So I'm like, hey, I want to, like, you just feel that like excitement and you want to be a part of that. You want to share that. Right. And, but I've been encouraged recently by a good friend of mine who said, wait a minute, YouTube is like second largest search engine in the world. Make YouTube videos and speak to this audience that you want to talk to, and help them that way. Because I physically, as we've seen this year, can't necessarily get on a plane and go, Right. So like the best way I can do that is to just start doing the work and sharing, hey, this is my thought process. This is how I've been building apps and making a living professionally as a software developer. Let me show you how you can do it too.
Yeah. And that knowledge is really key. Like seeing somebody like you doing it, like it's definitely gonna inspire someone out there like, hey, maybe I can go out of my way.
I hope so. I really do. I really feel like at this point, I'm at a stage in life where it's important to just give. Like you gotta give something back. And there's like a phrase we have called each one teach one. And my uncle has this like photo of a hand reaching over the fence to grab another hand. It's like, you gotta do that. And it's like, you're in a good position, you get somewhere. It's like, I feel like you like pay it back. I mean, you can pay it forward in a lot of ways in life, but sometimes just pay it back. Go back and grab someone else and help them come across.
Right. Nice. And just feel like also, how do you think people will, like there's a huge stigma on technology, like in the in the Black community, like people are like pretty scared of it, or they feel like they're not gonna be able to do it. But I feel like so many people have the potential to do it. Like, I've been around so many smart people, but if you tell them about technology, they're like, nope, that's not me.
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah.
I think like, so one of the things I really love about the direction, like for instance, just being specific with like mobile development, both with Flutter and with Swift UI, this declarative UI is a different way of getting people or connecting with people with that technology to build something. It's like you want to make something and the languages can be intimidating. And if you throw an IDE in front of someone, just says, okay, here's Eclipse or Xcode, and you got to build it with this code. And it's like, this, I don't understand what this is. But if you connect to people with their why and the thing they're trying to build, and they can start to do it in visual pieces, because a lot of people are more visually oriented in their learning.
Right.
And so it makes it a little bit more accessible. So I think examples of that help. I think that, you know, showing people how they connect them with it, like how does it benefit them? It's hard for anybody to want to do anything where they don't feel like they're a true part of it. You know, if you don't feel connected to a community, you're not going to participate. If you don't, like, it's the reason why people don't raise their hand in class and ask questions. They don't feel a certain level of trust within that room that it's okay for them to raise their hands and say something. And that's where we have to go a long way to creating that level of comfort and trust that we can be trusted in the community, that technology can be trusted, and that will encourage people to use it.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great answer. And yeah, I just hope for the best as time goes on, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of room for growth. I think the best is yet to come. Because like you said, there's so many smart people that just we haven't reached, that like minds are gonna be blown by the things that they're able to do. It's like, man, I never thought of that.
Exactly. Nice. So WWDC is this week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I call it the Christmas for software developers.
I do too. It's Merry Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas. So yeah, what has been your favorite present, I'll say?
Oh, so this is really good. I think I still say, like, because of what I'm working on right now is creating action classifiers was a talk I just watched for machine learning. I'm a big martial arts guy. I do a lot of boxing and Muay Thai and capoeira. And so I have this idea of like a training app. So I was like, man, but trying to get all this stuff to work with ML and like, I was like, where am I going to do all the model processing and build like the, you know, but now it's like Apple's provided a lot of this stuff and then you can start defining it. And so I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Like I'm literally like pacing around the house, not even pacing. I'm literally like jabbing, turning, like working on combinations. I'm like, this is what the game's going to be like. You're going to score points. So it's like super excited. So that's the biggest thing. I do like the improvements to Swift UI because there's like a lot of components, of course, like grids, like the lazy grid stack and things that are coming. Text view finally, because it's like you were having to use like the old UI text view. So these incremental improvements, which we expect, I think are really, really good. These are great, but the biggest one I think that is just like I enjoyed watching. I'm going through some sessions today about StoreKit and being able to test StoreKit within Xcode, so you don't have to do this dance of like creating the in-app purchase things and like doing this little dance. It's like it's a lot easier, and if it really feels like the platform is maturing in a way that makes it again more accessible. Because if you're bringing on all these new developers and there's all these things to learn. Right. A lot of times people will be like, man, this is too much, man. I can't learn all these different things. But if you make a lot of these processes that really aren't making the app and delivering the value to the end user at the end of the day, you make that easier. They can focus on the thing that they're really trying to bring to life. And I think we'll retain more people that way.
Right. Yeah, another thing I really liked about Swift UI is the accessibility. Like you can easily have dynamic text and, you know, it's like it all comes in the box for free, so you don't have to focus on that as much.
It's a great idea. It's a great point because like I didn't realize until like now, like I've always had really good vision. And even now I look at screens, I'm like, wait a minute, like I need this text to be a bit bigger. Like, and I'd love to be able to make sure that it's larger, you can adjust. And I had a quick conversation a couple of weeks ago with a friend who told me that at something I had, she's like, well, I'm not a visual learner either, I'm an auditory learner. And that made me think, it's like, wait a minute, I really should be supporting voiceover accessibility within the app to make sure that if she just wants to hear what's being presented, she can do that.
Right. Nice. And does that come? Does VoiceOver come with SwiftUI?
VoiceOver is an older accessibility function. Like you can go into the settings and you can turn it on, but you do have to, like previously, you would have to make sure you tag like your items, your UI items and things like that. And whether you did in a storyboard or not. I'm not going to argue about storyboards here, but you know, you'd have to do it here. So I'm imagining, I haven't looked at VoiceOver yet in SwiftUI, but I imagine that it's even easier. So it's just like
you don't have to do as much tags to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a really exciting technology for sure. And going forward, like with the Apple Silicon, what are your thoughts on that?
So that one's been rumored for a long time, and I'm not really a hardware guy, which is ironic because I started my education as a computer engineering major. That's exactly what I was going to be doing. And then I realized like my second year in, it's like I spent all this time in these engineering labs building circuit boards and stuff. I was like, I don't like this at all. So I went back to, I was like, I just want to code. I just want to code.
And code is like a lot more portable than
yes.
hardware.
Exactly. And I'm all about portable. Yeah, hardware is like, that's a tougher. So I don't get as excited about it as I probably would have been like when I was 19. I do think it's one of those interesting things though, because watching Apple and the way that they've moved as a company over all of these years is like part of their DNA is they really do like to be in control. Because some things that happened in the 80s, I think they just they're never going to let go of. And just like, we've made some mistakes that we're never going to make again. And I think this was a move to like sort of getting that control over, you know, the production and the pieces that are going into there, making sure that it works optimally for their devices. My friends who are gearheads are super excited about it. They're still talking about, I've got like a Slack channel going right now with some of my college classmates, and they are just going like bananas for it. They can't wait. So it's exciting, but it's just not on my radar.
Yeah, for me, what I'm most excited is that we shall be able to develop apps for 3 platforms like iOS, iPad, and then macOS. So I'm really looking forward to it.
That I think is like, for me, one of the big game changers. I mean, you could do it before, but again, it's like, how many hurdles did you have to jump to go over to get there? And now, in fact, for the Finlit literature like app, that was the big thing for me. It's like when I saw that, I'm like, oh wait, I can easily make this available on the Mac, on the phone, on the iPad, and like even down to the watch. Like I can give you complications so you can you can keep track of where you are. And then the nice thing that it saves me from doing is that I can still then have enough time to, if I want to go over to the other side, Android, and write something that's going to work over there. Now I have the freedom and time to do it versus spending all my time trying to get my iOS or my Apple platform ecosystem stuff working, you know. So that freedom of time and being able to do something else, I think is great as well.
Nice. And also talk about complications. Why do they call it complications?
I've never been able to understand that name. Like it just seems Apple's not always the best at naming things. You know, like I know people. My friend just noted today. He's like, I'm tired of hearing about Catalinas and Big Sirs. So just call it 20, so we know, and name them all the same every year. So it's just like easier to keep track of. He's like, I don't want to hear about Big Marsupial Valley or whatever they're calling the thing next year. So the complications, but I do like the idea of like having on the watch phase, like a bit of information that's just like at a glance you can get. For instance, like my step count every day. I can just look right there and glance, and I don't have to open the app. Everything shouldn't require you to open an app, which is why I'm really excited about the widgets as well. So you get the widget on the screen that can provide more information at a glance. So you literally, so I think about the widgets, it's kind of like complications, but for the bigger screen size of the phone. You're providing information in time that's of value to the user when they need it, and they don't have to like keep opening up apps. So that's just a time waster. I want to know something very quickly. I get the information. I want to go about my day. And
then they also have the smart widgets.
Yes. So yeah, I think that's a great user experience improvement. it's been a long time coming. I mean, Android's had widgets forever, and finally we're getting the ability to do that. So
Yeah,
I'm excited about.
Android users are like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we already had that for like
I know,
10
right?
years. Yeah.
Which is funny because when I watch Google I/O, it's so funny to contrast it with WWDC because it's like things that where you get the oohs and ahs, which I missed this year because it was recorded and it's not in the auditorium like it's been in the past.
Mhm.
You don't get those ooh ah and the claps different times during the presentation. It's just like it's like watching a television show, a comedy with no laugh track. It's like it's got to just be funny on its own. There's no signal that you're supposed to laugh at this time.
Mhm.
So but yeah, it's really good. I'm really excited about what they're doing, and there's a convergence there too. I mean, eventually, I respect each approach for each platform and the audience that they have and what they're trying to do. And Apple, of course, has they've decided who their audience is and the approach that they want to take. And this, it hasn't changed. It's been a part of the company's DNA forever. It's like ease of use, clarity, just this design is really clean and not complicated, which is why the term complications just does not seem to fit. That's not a word that just sounds like an Apple term. You would say complications. We don't do complicated here, unless it's provisioning profiles. It's complicated.
Nice. And yeah, the other thing is, I was surprised there was no hardware introduced this year. It was, I think it's the first WWDC without any devices.
Yeah, I think that's because we're getting another event, though. I mean, you're always going to get the fall event, and I think the fall event is going to be. They've got some things. In fact, I heard a rumor that there's even some software stuff that wasn't quite ready that is going to get tabled into the fall event. So it makes sense to me, honestly, because especially when there's no physical presentation, because the keynote is really for the press and it's the consumer facing stuff, right? And that's what you do. The platform State of the Union is for us. That's where we go ooh, what goodies are we gonna get? What APIs are open to us? And that's for me, the most exciting thing about WWDC is not the keynote. I watch it, but I'm just okay, fine. This is what can I do? Because some of those things they present, it's I'm probably never gonna get API access to this, am I? And then you get to the platform State of the Union. It's no, these are the goodies. This is what you're going to be able to do. And you're all right, let's kick this week off. Let me learn and dive in. And that's what builds the excitement for me. So it'll be interesting to see what physical devices come out in the fall because I'm due for an upgrade year because I'm about to upgrade everything. So I'm due for a new phone, new laptop, new watch, potentially even a new iPad because I really love that Scribble. And that Scribble on the and I have an Apple Pencil and I have an iPad Pro. So the improvements there, I think, gives me another way to work away from the laptop. It's if I'm doing sketch, if I'm taking notes, it's really, really nice feature.
Nice. And also, what's your favorite Apple product?
It's actually the AirPods.
Okay.
The AirPods, they are the best. And I know I'm not wearing them right now because I actually was going to get a new pair. My old ones, the batteries died, but I'm here in Colombia and I was going to wait again until I got back to the US and I was going to restock all my stuff at the Apple store there. But it really allowed me I was impressed by the way that they stay in when I'm working out. It's I'm doing, I'm not just jumping rope and stuff, literally doing capoeira workouts. I'm doing spinning kicks and cartwheels and all kinds of stuff. And it stays in. I'm okay, this is great. Not being tethered to the wire is something that I find which is liberating. When a friend of mine told me to get a pair. He's you got to get a pair. I mean, these are great. I was I don't know, man. I don't think it's worth the price. Then I got them, and it's totally this is the first device. I think the first Apple device that made me feel like that was the original iPod. Having all my songs on that little and they still have these earphones, but it's I was carrying around these bulky you could have a CD player or Walkman with a tape. You have to be selective. I'm gonna go work out today. I need to
Those were the days.
Yeah, but now you're oh, I could 1,000 songs. This is amazing. And so it was just really, really like groundbreaking and changing the game there. And the AirPods for me is like the latest that really just changed the way, like for me, like the quality of sound and my ability to interact and just very freeing. So it's really good.
And the new ones have like the theater sound system. I forgot what
Yeah,
it's called.
yeah, I can't wait to try that out because like when they mentioned, they gave the example of like being on a plane or a train and
Right,
like turning, and I'm like, I gotta find a really good. I mean,
right.
I mean, I'm literally wearing a Black Panther t-shirt. I'm a super nerd,
Okay.
so I'll be watching an Avengers movie or something like Black Panther, or I'll be watching Infinity War to test this out with my AirPods when I get them.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's gonna be like kind of disorienting in a way. I don't know. Hopefully it's like safe.
If you have you ever been to had a 4D experience in the movie theater?
Like an IMAX.
Well, it's even more because
Okay.
4D has like you get the surround sound, but then like it's like in a rainy scene, it sprays mist, and then the chair will move in
Wow.
relation to like action that's going on. I went and
Right.
saw Rogue. I was in Malaysia and I saw Rogue One,
Wow.
and it was incredible. I was like, oh, this is like game changing. Of course, the movie has to work too because I went to another movie that was a 4D, and I'm like, why is my chair moving? Like I shouldn't be moving at all. This doesn't make any
Right.
sense in the storyline. But I'm hoping for a similar experience that like I really like you feel immersed when you're in the movie theater like that.
Right.
Of course, it's got that fourth dimension of physically moving you, but even the sound alone
Okay.
was that if they can duplicate that in these two earpieces, that's phenomenal. It's really phenomenal.
It is, really is. Yeah, I don't think they have 4D in the US, do they? In the
Yes.
they do? Oh,
Yeah, it's just select theaters though. I don't think they
okay.
call it 4D. I think they have a different name for it in the US, but it's definitely at select theaters. I'm
Right.
saying this only because I've heard, I don't know from personal experience, if they
Okay.
but I've done 4D in Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia. So clearly, I mean, if Southeast Asia has it, well, I shouldn't say that because if Southeast Asia has it, that does not mean that the US has it at all.
Right, yeah. I mean, yeah, the US could have some rules like oh, this is not safe or something like
That's
that.
true. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
But I think they do have it because I've heard like promotions of like certain. I just don't think it's as widespread. I don't think you'll find it at just your average like cinema. So you have to go to like a particular one that has it because they got to spend the money. Like AMC spent $5 billion to upgrade their movie theaters, and then boom, COVID hits, and like now they're in financial trouble.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, a lot of businesses and people are in trouble, but
Yeah.
let's see. And yeah, so what else? Let's see. Um, and yeah, I would say like where do you see iOS development in the next 3 to 5 years or 10 years from now?
Well, I definitely think that, Swift UI, the declarative approach will be the standard by then. I think, if you're doing, any UI kit, Objective-C or anything, you're either doing some lower level stuff with Objective-C or C if you're going to even lower level, or you're supporting like some legacy product or software, like I mentioned, having to do before as well.
Yeah.
But I think the real question is like, I think we're going to finally get the glasses. We'll get some sort of VR experience because that's where also been making improvements. Although I don't think there were any AR kit announcements this year. They're going in that direction, and
I thought
that might
there was a
be.
talk.
I'm sure there's at least one or two, but like you can every year you can tell like what the focus is by the number of talks that they have. And this year's definitely like app clips and widgets and things like that because there are more sessions on those to get people on board and getting them developing. Whereas that was AR Kit last year. I believe it was last year or maybe the year before.
Right.
So I think we're gonna get wearables. I think we're gonna get wearables from Apple, glasses. I think they're gonna come from other people too because I've seen other companies try to do this and launch. In fact, thought I was going to be a part of a project with Bose launching one for a project that I was working on, and we were going to do a presentation at South by Southwest this year, but it didn't pan out. But I think at this point, both Google will come back with some new glasses that'll be better and actually will be something that people will wear, and Apple's definitely going to be doing that because they've shown with the watch that they can be successful with wearables. They can do it in a way that's stylish and fashionable. And I think they'll do the same thing with the wearables with the glasses, and then you'll be able to get that enhanced UI experience. And the nice thing about the road that they've laid out with Swift UI and its ability to adapt to these different platforms, whether it's the smallest the watch or as big as your laptop screen, that the glasses are just going to fit right in between, and it's not going to be a problem. There's going to be some differences just because of the nature of not being able to touch. So Siri has to improve, because I'm sure that's going to be the interaction in a lot of ways, or physically touching, out in the space and having the glasses recognize you touching those points. So I think next 3 to 5 years are going to be incredibly exciting for the developments that are coming forward.
Sure. And also, what about in terms of like artificial intelligence, machine learning? And are you already working on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's constantly improving. That's sort of like that road is, we're already along that road. It's just a matter of the models getting better, the AI getting better and improving. One of the big things that we've seen this year is like the translator being able to be on device. And that's huge, because I think one of the big impediments is if you have to send the data to a server and wait for a response, you've already created an interruption in that experience for the user. But now that you've improved it so much and gotten the size of the models down so that you can actually do a lot of this on device, I think it's very, very powerful. And you can start to see it on things like your phone and eventually your watch and of course the wearable. And I think, not to nerd out again, but like I've always seen this as like Tony Stark talking to Jarvis, like an Iron Man. Like that's just my, like, you want to have that kind of conversation going on with your AI, like, ideally,
Yeah, and also in what ways have you used like technology in your travels in these different locations?
I think the biggest one, I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind, of course, is mapping. Like mapping, having maps and being able to get around. I depend on it highly, especially a lot of times I'm in a new city and not being able to like easily feel confident with my way around. And one thing I love about the Apple Watch in that regard is that there's a saying here in Colombia. It says "No des papaya." It's like don't give papaya, which basically means don't look like an idiot. Don't make yourself an object, a target. And that mean that because like people walk around with like expensive jewelry on, or if you're walking around holding a map. I mean, I'm just kind of older, but like looking at your phone, you don't look like we know where you're going. You don't want to do that. And so one of the great things when I travel is like on the Apple Watch, when it's giving you directions, you just tap for left and
right. It has like the haptic feedback.
Forward. And it's just a great way that technology, and it's a great way that the technology can not only get you where you're going, but get you there a little more safely, because you don't have to worry about looking like you don't know where you're going. And I've done that in a couple of places, like in Eastern Europe, where I was just like, ooh, just walking some dodgy streets and just giving me the turn-by-turn directions. Like, okay. So that's I think the biggest place where the technology has helped me while traveling. That, and of course, finding places to eat.
And you use like Google Translate as well?
So I've tried it a few times, and it's just not. I use Google Translate more now in my Spanish class, and it's only to check my work. Like I do the translation, I write the stuff, and then I just pop it into Google Translate to make sure that like my grammar is correct. Because that's kind of like my focus now. It's like I'm conversationally fine. Like I can have conversations about just about anything, but I want to be better as a professional and public speaker in Spanish. So like, I want to make sure that the word choice is right. I want to make sure my tense selection is right. Instead of just like saying present tense when I really am not speaking present tense. It's like make sure and using the correct past tense, kind of thing. But that's one of the things I like about the change with this on-device translation that Apple's dropping, is to be able to see that should be faster, because if I don't have an internet connection somewhere, or if it's wonky, then there's an interruption there, and it'd be nice to just get that immediate feedback. And I can't learn every language, so there are places that I go where I'm just like, I'm going to need some digital, I'm going to need some technology to help me. You know, I have the
Right.
languages that I'm learning or know or I'm trying to learn, but
Right.
there's still like, I only have so much time.
Right. Nice. Yeah. Hopefully, in the future, I'll also be, I want to be like a digital nomad, hopefully in like the next 5 to 10 years. So we'll
You
see.
can do it. You
Right.
can totally do it. Are you working like full time, like at like a physical location right now?
Yes, right now. But yeah. But hopefully, we'll see how it goes.
So start with, it's just a piece of like, you can start with, and this was mentioned in, I think, that book, The 4 Hour Work Week, like
Hmm.
start by trying to just work 1 or 2 days a week remotely or from home. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess now it's probably everybody's doing it, but, and then increase your sort of keep the quality output and then just increase the amount of time that you're working remotely and the distance.
Right.
And so, cause I did this, like I started where I was in Atlanta. I was in an office, but then I would work sometimes from home.
Right.
And then it went from that to being, okay, I'm working from home, but I'm working from a place within Atlanta. Then I was like, well, now I'm in South Carolina. It's like,
Right.
now I'm in North Carolina. And then eventually the distance just got greater and greater and greater. So like the point is like, now I'm in like, I could be in Thailand or I could be in Colombia or whatever, but you can take it step by step because there's two things. You want to build the confidence with your coworkers, employers, or clients.
Yeah.
And you also want to build a skill yourself of being able to build that routine of working remotely because things will change when you're in different places and you
Hmm.
have to adjust to that.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually did for like about 6 months last year, and it was really exciting. Like I was able to like travel to Prague.
Yes, Prague
Uh,
is great, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Did you
amazing.
see the
Yeah.
creepy baby tower?
Is it the two towers?
There's a tower and it's got like these statues, like these babies like crawling up. So I used to live there. I
I
had an
missed that.
apartment that's like
Oh,
right by that park. It's like, so as you give people directions like over there, because there's like
okay.
two markers. There's like this church with a big clock. It's like a circular clock, and then a
Yeah.
creepy baby tower. But people, you can see the creepy baby tower from a lot further away. So it's like, okay, you see that tower. My apartment is
Right.
like on the corner.
Yeah, I was really fascinated like how all the buildings are like they all look the same, there's the same height. And then I went to like the city center as well. Yeah, the touristy place. So
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's a beautiful city. It's an amazing beer. It's a beautiful. It's like one of my favorite places. I think only Budapest in that part of the world is like a city that I like even more than Prague.
right.
Uh,
Oh
but
wow.
yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, traveling just opens your mind to like different cultures. So it's exciting.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, so to close it off, what advice do you have somebody out there who wants to get started today or tomorrow?
I think the best advice is to get started today. Like, I mean,
Okay.
I can't think of a better piece of advice than to say, okay, but I would say along with that, you're going to need help. Join communities. Find, like, for instance, there's a Blacks in Technology Slack group. Like, join that. In fact, I think we got in contact with each other. See, this is like, it already is like great example of like that working.
Right.
There is an iOS developers Slack group. I would join that as well as Cocoa Heads, which is the original sort of like the OG like group for like developing on the Mac and Cocoa frameworks.
Yeah.
And be a part of all of those because there's a lot of differing opinions and there's a lot of discussions going on about everything from how to sell and market apps if you want to be indie to getting help with specific issues with like Swift UI or UI Kit or Core Data or whatever it is you're working with.
Right.
And then the third piece of that advice, I would say start with something that really fascinates you or intrigues you or interests you, because that's what's going to propel you forward. So like say, for instance, you have an idea of something you'd like to see, then start from that and figure out how you would build it. Don't worry about like having to take a whole bunch of classes or courses. You'll figure this stuff out along the way and you'll fill in the knowledge. It's not a straight path. It's life just doesn't work that way.
Right.
You will definitely want to see people out here like, they're doing the instructional stuff. Paul Hudson, for instance, has some really good videos out there on this kind of stuff. And there's some other people who have courses, but like don't fall into the trap of just watching videos or taking classes. Start building something and then fill in the gaps with what you don't know. Because then you're saying, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. How do I do that? But you're coming with an actual problem that you're trying to solve, a real problem, not just some sample thing that you're not tied, you're not even invested in, you know.
Right.
If you want to make a to-do app, make a to-do app. I mean, everybody does it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a to-do app.
Right. Yeah, and that project that you want to build is gonna push you through the hard times, like when you're blocked on a
Yeah.
project. Trying
Yeah.
to figure it out. Yeah. Have you gone through the iOS Stanford course? Stanford University?
Oh yeah. So I took it a long time ago. I did
Oh,
do
okay.
it. I did the course. What was the guy's name? I saw the first two. One was taught by a younger student, and then the other one was like the guy who taught it for years. They had gray hair, tall guy.
Right.
I
Yeah.
can't remember his name. He
Yeah.
was the one that, yeah, for a long time. But I did, when I first started, like iOS 3 or 4, it was a younger guy. I think he was just a student at
Oh,
Stanford, or he might have been from a company that was just doing it. He just came to the university and just taught it
nice.
before they sort of formalized it. And I know that guy's first name is Paul. I just can't remember his last name. But that's it's a good resource. Like that course has been around for a long time. And I'm sure like the components have changed a little bit, but it was very well structured. But we live in a time now where there are so many great online resources. For instance, the Ray Wenderlich is another one. They do tutorial based. Like I've gone to their conference as well. Got a chance to like hang out with a couple of them as well, different plans, and talking about like what they're doing and how they go about it. And they just have a different approach because everybody's learning style is different. Some people like the lecture approach that the Stanford University has. Some people just don't gel with, but like a tutorial based approach like they do at Ray Wenderlich might work better for you. Somebody you find on YouTube might be doing something even differently, and they teach it as connected. You have to find a style that works for your style of learning. So when presenting it, and just don't be afraid to go out there. But I just caution people, do the building part. Don't get stuck in tutorials and watching videos. Make sure you're actually building something, you're working towards something, and use those things to supplement when you have a question. Okay, I don't know how to do this. Now I need to, and read the documentation.
Right.
I know Apple's documentation is not the best. I know that, but a lot of times, if you just read it, as dry as it can be sometimes, what you need to know is right there. Like a lot of times I find that I don't even have to go to these other sources. Go right to the documentation, maybe 3 paragraphs down, it'll just explain like boom, 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 boom. It's like, oh, okay, and you have it. So you want to make sure you have all of these things. You want to be using everything that's available. We live in this great age of information availability. Take advantage of it. It's there, and a lot of it is free. Take advantage of it and use it.
Definitely. And there's also the Swift playgrounds.
Yes, those are fun.
Yeah, those are fun. Yeah, that's a great starter to like learn how to do like conditional statements and that's how I got started. So
I actually would suggest like maybe even start like your basic idea, like from your sketch, start with the playground. Just don't even try to open up an Xcode project and start a whole project. Just start within a playground and do the small thing and then go from there.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a great resource when I got started. It was with playground. So I was like, wow, I really love this. Then I took it seriously after that.
Yeah, it's so cool that it's grown. Like, I mean, how long have playgrounds been? Has it been like 2 or 3 years, I think?
No, it's been like, I started in 2016. So
okay.
Yeah, so that was probably the first year.
Okay. Yeah, I have bad memory after I left the U.S. Like everything after I left the U.S. is kind of like just like the time, the way I experience time now is a little bit differently. So everything feels like 2 or 3 years ago, but I've been gone now for 5 years. So yeah, you're right. I'm like, oh wait, that's been a long time.
Yeah, nice. And where can people find you out there?
Oh, cool. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @thecoconomad. And I'll just type this into your chat here.
Yeah. The
So
Coco.
at the Coco Nomad. And
Yeah.
my YouTube channel is also the Coco Nomad. And if you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, the Coco Nomad podcast, I try to do an episode every week. Every other week, I do a retrospective, if you're familiar with like agile process. And I just use it as a way to sort of encourage people by following me, like how I space my time. Like I do 2-week sprints, everything I'm working on and things that I do, and I just review like what worked, lessons I've learned, and most of the lessons I learned are not technical. They're about life. I talk a lot about life. I talk a lot about travel. I talk a lot about everything that you're trying to do. So I'm really focused on making a living and making a life, creating one for yourself that works for you, that's best for you.
Right. Nice. And I'm also super interested in your financial literacy app. So. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's coming. I'll be talking about that on the podcast and building it in public on YouTube.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. All
And
right.
come along.
It's
Come
been
along.
great talking to you today, and I'm
Oh,
wishing you all the best.
thanks, Ron. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you and glad I got a chance to be a part of it. I'm really glad you had me on. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. And I'll definitely all the best. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.